saw that, eh?
Okay, we'll call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. I need a motion for adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on Monday, June 11th, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We have no delegations this evening. Before we move into the business section, I'll just ask Councillor Buds, Councillor Fraze, and Councillor Espy to join me at the front, please. Now, last Thursday, I attended the June district meeting for AMM at Manitou. And at that time, I was presented with 3 5-year service pins, and I was asked to present them to Councillor Espy, Councillor Buds, and Councillor Fraze. And although their service is really 7.5 years, I'm very pleased to present you with your 5-year service pin. Congratulations. Well done. Congratulations. So we'll have a number of hearings this evening. Just before I open these hearings, I just want to outline the process that we're following so that everybody, council and the public, knows what to expect. We're going to open the hearings one at a time. We're going to ask if there's anyone here to speak to the hearing, and we'll ask if they're here to speak for or against. Anybody that intends to make a presentation will be asked for their name for the record. We'll hear from the applicant first, then we'll hear from anyone else that wants to speak in favor of the motion, and then finally we'll hear from anybody that's opposed. After all have presented, the applicant will again have an opportunity to respond to any issues that were raised. Council can ask questions from the presenters throughout the presentation for clarification. And I'd ask all presenters to address your questions through the chair. So we'll open the public hearing for conditional use PC 41-18. This is for Mia Estates Limited at 3171 Oxford Common. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Dr. Antonician? Sorry, Lou Antonician?
Please, I'm retired. I'm here representing me and States, Mr. Mayor and Council, and just my comments here are really just hopefully to bring things into perspective and address some of the issues that were in the 2 letters in the minutes or in the agenda. But really my comments are for all 4 things on the agenda tonight, so I'll only speak once. If I'm interpreting the essence of people's misgivings this evening as outlined in the agenda, they can be summarized as 2 things. They are concerned about the added traffic to the area, and they were never aware that high-density housing was planned for the site. And Mena Estates would like to respond by saying the following: that PR 240 is a provincial highway with varying amounts of traffic depending on the time of day. It's not a typical residential street. Secondly, Mena Estates has always proposed a multi-unit R3 project for the properties in question. The original zoning applied for by Mena Estates allowed for the possibility of commercial enterprise along 240, but with the intent that the commercial enterprise would be restricted to complementary business and part of dual-use buildings, both residential and commercial. The current proposed buildings are the same number of doors, which is 128, As outlined in an open house attended by 200 citizens several years ago at Myers Norris Penny on the island, our website has always indicated the intent to build higher density housing. Despite serious inquiries and with changing provincial rules on condos, developers were simply not interested in dual-use buildings. One of the concepts that we had talked about included a signature building with a high-profile Portage business with a similar number of condos to the newly proposed 12 plexes above the commercial enterprise itself. Mean Estates has turned down inquiries for large traffic volume 24/7 businesses, despite it being a logical choice for the area just off the highway. And lastly, Manitoba Highways has previously studied the anticipated traffic volumes at Mean Estates and PR 240. As a result of that study, Mean Estates constructed and paid for an extra lane on 240 at the Oxford entrance and additional work at the Mean Avenue turnoff itself. A traffic volume study at the time did not support a traffic light, but Manitoba Highways can reassess it at any time. So if the council has any questions, otherwise I'll sit down.
Okay. Were there any questions from council for Mr. Antonishin? Okay, thank you for your presentation. Was there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? Once again, final call. Anyone here to speak to the hearing? Okay, I need a motion to close the public hearing for conditional use PC 41-18 Mean Estates.
Resolved that the public hearing for conditional use PC 41-18 Mean Estates Limited 31-71 Oxford Common now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Budds and seconded by Councillor Fraze. All those in favor? And that's carried.
So the issue we have tonight is to allow for multifamily dwellings in a C2 commercial zone. We've just heard in terms of the intentions, Mean Estates Limited has applied for conditional use to allow for multifamily dwellings in a C2 central commercial zone, and the applicant wishes to build a 128-unit multifamily development on the property. We know that it's zone C2 and R3 residential family zone, with 2 of the buildings being in a C2 central commercial zone. And the applicant application was circulated to the various city departments with no concerns, as well as public notices were sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the conditional use application of Mean Estates Limited to allow for multifamily dwellings in a C2 central commercial zone at the property 31-71 Oxford Common, which is legally described as Lot 2, Plan 52727, Parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Budds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Now, you had a couple letters for the record.
The first letter said, "We, the homeowners, tax-paying residents of River Road, object to granting a conditional use permit to Mean Estates Limited, file number 41-18. There is a properly zoned area sitting undeveloped next to this C2 area. This undeveloped area would have 180 vehicles accessing River Road. Further rental units will add another 70 vehicles accessing Provincial Highway 240 or River Road through a school zone, which will increase congestion and decrease safety. The city may need more rental units, but this is not the area the city should be offering incentives for developers." And that is signed by 9 neighbors on River Road. And the other letter says, "To City Council of Portage la Prairie from Craig O'Reilly at 345 River Road. I wish to register my objection to the proposed conditional use plan, file numbers PC 41-18, 42-18, 43-18, and 44-18. The Mean Estates project was never proposed to include high-density population in this area. The developer already has a properly zoned property suitable for a reasonably sized project next to this C2 zone. This proposal would be overbuilding in a very limited area. Homeowners east to west and especially north are concerned the addition of over 250 vehicles in this development will further congest the access to Provincial Highway 240 through a school zone. Earlier, Council's decisions to close access streets from Malinville and Coca Platts has made River Road access congested, and extra vehicles will only increase congestion and reduce safety on the ambulance route into the city. Council is pursuing this project based on the need for rental units, but this is too much like Stride Place, a needed facility hurriedly built in the wrong place on a bad deal with hidden future costs that will cause problems in the future. Since Council has already voted a tax subsidy to this project, the fairness of this hearing is hypocritical. Council members should consider the advice they have received and their liability before endorsing this conditional use plan. Sincerely, Craig O'Reilly.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for variation PC 42-18. This is for Meehan Estates, 3171 Oxford Common. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
Can you speak against it at this time?
Yes, both hearings, any hearings you can. Your name, sir?
Harold Crest.
We were never asked before the first
Just a minute, sir. Very clear. Mr. Kress, if you'd like to take the podium. Yes. Could you just verify the spelling of your last name, sir?
C-R-E-S-S.
Okay, the floor is yours, sir.
Years ago, with Dr. Atkinson, presented the format for the development of Meehan Estates. It was set out as a 50-plus development with a proposed 32-unit condominium built at the northeast corner. There was no proposal for any further high-density building other than single or dual-family residences. It's still on the website, is that? It's still there. I just printed it off the other day. Now, putting 200 and some cars in there, when you watch them line up in the morning to try and get on to 240, let's say 7:30, 8 o'clock, when school's in session, the lineup does get long. So whether council or whoever is responsible for traffic did a study once they opened up Meehan Estates area to see what's going to happen, your figures can't be right. That's for sure. The proposal that they're going with is putting high-density units in. Now, whether it turns out, I don't know what the development is going to be, whether they're going to be low rental units, 18th Street, stuff like that. That definitely doesn't favor me. I thought I was buying into a 50-plus area. I was led to believe that when I purchased the home. I went through that in multiple ways. Dr. Atkinson, or Lou Atkinson, as he resolves now to be called, as he's retired, told me he would probably be building a house on the north side of our unit. I don't think that'll probably happen now. It's just too much in the wrong place and not right. I do agree, units are needed. Other developers in Portage are building without a tax incentive of any type, as far as I know. Units are being built just across the tracks in North End by CBS Enterprises, I believe it is. They're going up now on the old McAllister P site. But that's what I have to say. I just think it's in the wrong place, too much, wrong time. Thank you.
Okay. Did council have any questions for Mr. Kress? Okay, thank you, Mr. Kress. Were there other people wanting to speak to the hearing? Mr. O'Reilly, if you want to speak, you're...
the hearing or in favor of the hearing?
Either one.
Okay.
And just for the record, Craig O'Reilly. Yep.
Got this River Road. I find this whole plan just a little overboard. I believe that the Meehan Estates people are acted in bad faith to anyone that ever purchased any property in their estate by changing their entire development plan. They're certainly sabotaging the rest of their development because nobody's going to want to buy a place in there for the next 5 years with this construction. And then when you have 8 high-rise apartments there, I doubt anyone else is going to want to move in. You plan to have 500 people approximately living in this development when it's finished, and they've taken away all the services for them that the C2 area was intended for. Now you've got all these 500 people, they have to go into town through that chokehold between Agassiz and Crescent Lake. They're going to be going back and forth how many times a day? We have 2 areas in town that have high-density populations, and I think the public safety person would agree that they're the hardest to police. I have friends in the north end that sold their house at a loss to get out of there. I wonder, will there be on-site security in this project when you have 500 people living there? I believe we've overstated the need for 180 apartments.
Mr. Riley, I have to ask you to focus your comments on the variation.
That's
Okay.
where I have to question. When we were originally called up, you never asked, was there anyone speaking against that original proposal? All you asked was for Dr. Antonishin and anyone after him speaking in favor of it. I listened.
Yeah, speaking to can be for or against Mr. Riley.
Kind of a weasel word. So I take it now I can't go back? I'm sticking with the,
Right now, we're hearing, we've got a request for a variation, and the request is to vary the maximum width of the access drive from the required 10.7 meters to be increased to 28.9 meters in a C2 central commercial zone. That's what we're dealing with right now.
And we've already gone past and accepted this first proposal. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry.
Without a clear call for objections?
Sorry, can I just get clarification from Mr. Brooks, please?
This variation is for you're on 4218 is for the residents on the ground floor in a C2 zone, and for the front yard setback to be reduced to 6 meters, just for clarification.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not talking to that issue, obviously.
Well, you could speak to an increase in residential as opposed to commercial? Because this was
Am I to understand that in that 30 seconds where nobody was asked to speak against it, if they wanted to speak against it, council passed a resolution to approve at least 4 of these apartment blocks?
Council approved the first one, yes.
Without ever allowing anyone to speak against it? Well, I mean, you say speak to the project. You know people were here to speak against it. Harold got up only because we realized you passed us by for the first time. And there's a lot more to go here. I mean, I want to know how green this project is supposed to be. Are we using recycle, or is it just going to be, ship it in? Is the fire chief comfortable with such a high density? Do we have the pumping power to put out fires? Is the transportation chair comfortable with the River Road situation? And does he really think that he can go to the provincial government and get them to put in a 4-lane highway? I mean, and finally, I guess, it's public knowledge that the credit union invested millions of dollars into that project.
Mr. Riley, that's out of order and uncalled for.
We're talking a conflict of interest here.
That's uncalled
If you don't
for?
want to hear it, but we're also talking breach of trust.
Is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing, for or against? Your name, sir?
Steve McMillan.
Take the podium. Steve McMillan.
Good evening. I'm here to represent Vinyl Holdings along with Mean Estates. Just wanted to add a couple things with this variance. So the reduction in the front yard that we're requesting is from 9.1 meters down to 6 meters, just to line up with the front yards of the R3 zoning of the other 3 buildings. And then with the variance on the main floor residential of the most easterly building is for the 8 units on the main floor. And I believe it also covers a portion of building 3 as well. I mean, speaking to some of the other issues with traffic, I mean, if it was left as commercial, the commercial would have more traffic than the residential uses. The traffic is all day, every day, where the residential would be in the peak hours in the morning, noon and night. But if there's any other questions related to this variance, I could answer those for you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McMillan. Any questions from council? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? You state your name for the record, please.
Jerry Lipkowski. I live on Wilkinson Crescent. Mayor, council, thank you for allowing this project to go forward. We need good quality housing in this city. As far as traffic, I also run a business here in town. I have approximately 30 employees, and we are kitty corner to an apartment block, a rather large apartment block. I guarantee you commercial drives 10 times more traffic, or at least my business does, than what comes out of that apartment block. This will actually result in a reduction in traffic by going residential, in my opinion. So thank you. We adapt. So this will affect me going to work. So do I get up 5 minutes earlier and leave 5 minutes earlier? No problem. If I go to work and I always encounter a train at the same time, you adapt. We're all wise people. We will adapt. This won't be a problem at all, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lukowski. Is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? Okay, I need a motion to close the hearing for PC 43-18.
We'll actually be closing the 4218. Yeah. Resolved that the public hearing of variation PC 42-18 or 18 Meehan Estates Limited, 31-71 Oxford Common now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor? And that's carried.
So the issue, as we understand, is to have the front yard requirement of 9.1 meters reduced to 6 meters and allow the restriction of no residences on the main floor to actually allow residents on the main floor of a C2 commercial zone. And so you can see the background behind that. We've discussed it. The application has been circulated to various city apartments with no concerns, and again, public notice has been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius. It is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Meehan Estates Limited to vary the front yard requirement from 9.1 meters to be reduced to 6 meters, and the restriction of no residences on the main floor, and to allow residences on the main floor in a C2 central commercial zone at the property known as 31-71 Oxford Common, which is legally described as Lot 2, Plan 52727, Parish of Portage Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for conditional use PC 43-18. This is Meehan Estates, 341 Oxford Common. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Mr. Riley?
All right. So now we're talking about the 4 apartments along River Road? The 4 apartment blocks along River Road, 48 pieces? I know he's agreeing.
Yes, we are.
All right. So you've already approved 32 size apartment blocks for this area, and now you want to approve 4 more smaller ones for this area. We've already stated that it's an overbuild in this area. Why can't you let them build 2 where they proposed and see how it works out? You've created this fear that there's no rentals in town, there never will be, we must rush into this. I mean, you make it sound like nobody that's living here is ever going to get a job out at your pea plant. I mean, 180 apartments is quite a bit.
Okay, is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add a bit of information on this application. So this is just to allow for residential dwellings in the C2 zone for the proposed building of 4 12-unit life lease buildings. So the ground floor will have 12 at-grade parking spaces enclosed, and then each floor above that will have another 4 units per building. They're all 2-bedroom units. Again, I don't see traffic being an issue with this. 48 units on that size of property isn't a lot. And as I said, if it was left as C2 with commercial on the main floor, with the possibility for residential added on the upper stories, the traffic would be much greater. So I think this is a good compromise for that site. So if there's any questions, I can answer those for you.
Okay, thank you. Council have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? Okay, need a motion to close the hearing?
Resolved that the public hearing for conditional use PC 43-18 Mean Estates Limited, 341 Oxford Common now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor? And that's carried.
So PC 4318 is an application for conditional use to allow multifamily dwellings in a C2. As we just heard, applicant wishes to build 4 12-unit multifamily dwellings with tenant parking garages on ground floor and suites on floor 2 through 4. Again, circulated with all various city departments and as well as property owners within a 100-meter radius. It is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie approve the conditional use of application of Mean Estates Limited to allow for multifamily dwellings in a C2 central commercial zone at the property 341 Oxford Common, which is legally described as Lot 1, Plan 52727, Parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Fraze. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for variation PC 44-18. This is Mean Estates at 341 Oxford Common. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is for the variance for the parking request on the 4 12-unit life lease buildings. As I stated previously, the buildings each have 12 parking spots, 1 for each unit on the ground floor of each building. However, we had 8 parking spots out front of each building for guest parking. After some initial issues with administration, we've removed 2 parking spots from each building, so there's 6, specifically from the corners of Oxford Common and Meehan, to allow a larger area with no parking that close to the intersections. If there's any further issues with that, I can answer any questions you have.
Okay, did council have questions? Councillor Buds?
Just understanding, when we read through the report, there was some concerns that city departments had with the request, and so I think there has been some dialogue, I think, with Mr. Brooks over those concerns. Is that correct? Maybe could we speak to a little bit of some of the, if there's been some remedies? I know you just mentioned the reduction of the 2 stalls, but as well, I think the fire hydrants, has that been addressed as well?
We did discuss them on it, and the fire department had a few concerns about having the proper distance around fire hydrants for firefighting purposes. There's a set distance supposed to be around them. So if you look closely on the picture, it does show them on the little ball boats. They may have to be adjusted a little bit so there's proper distance on each side of them. But I think they can be incorporated into the ball boats by doing that. The other option would be to move the hydrant some if they so wish to do that. Ball boats would probably be a little easier to move them accordingly, so they could be adjusted though.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. McMillan? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? Mr. Riley?
Yeah, one more time. Your own agenda says that the mayor will ask if there is anyone to speak in favor or opposed to the application, not this weasel "to" word. Therefore, your first motion was completely ramrodded through. And you know it.
Okay, is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? Mr. Kress?
I have one question, possibly for the city engineer or the rep from the construction company.
Well, if you address it through the chair, we'll endeavor to get
Thank
that
you, Your
information for you.
During the construction, is there going to be driven piles, will they drill piles, or what construction type is going to be used here?
Mr. Brooks, would you like to comment on that?
I'll have to defer that to a proponent for it because we do not have plans for the building yet.
Okay.
No, the only I asked that because that whole site is all backfilled. It's not original soil, except for some very low-lying areas. So I just wondered how deep they're going to be going with construction as far as the base goes.
Okay. Mr. McMillan, are you in a position to share any of that information or your Antonician?
A little bit, yeah.
Would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Worship. Both buildings are to be constructed as slabs. As far as the material going in and how much is being dug out, I don't have any of that information with me. But there are no piles being put in, so they're all slabs.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? Okay. Need a motion to close the hearing?
Resolve the public hearing for variation PC 44-18, Mean Estates Incorporated, 341 Oxford Common, now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, so PC 4418 basically is an application to vary the maximum width of access drive from the required 10.7 meters to be increased to 28.9 in a C2 central commercial zone. And so again, I'm not going to go through that complete analysis in the background, but we know that tenant parking for this location will be in garages on the main floor of the building, and the applicant wishes to have the remainder of the required parking spaces accessed from Oxford Common. So there has been similar variations approved in the past, as you can see them there. We did circulate this with departments as per usual, and that's why I brought up the question about addressing some of the concerns of the department, and those have been addressed through the reduction of spaces as well as the bulb out fire hydrant issue. There are 4 buildings. These 4 buildings are proposed to be life lease units and will require their own snow clearing, so snow removal for the driveways to the covered and uncovered parking will be the owner's responsibility. And as per usual, public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I also move that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Mean Estates Limited to vary the maximum width of an access drive from the required 10.7 meters to be increased to 28.9 meters in a C2 central commercial zone at the property known as 341 Oxford Common, which is legally described as Lot 1, Plan 52727, Parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, that's it for hearings. We're going to move into committees. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. So the first item is council indemnities, and this is not new to council, as this was dealt with in a first reading on June 11th. But just as just a bit of a background, there is a request or basically second and third reading to increase council indemnities to mirror somewhat similar of the effectiveness of a QP contract negotiation. And so it is a 2% increase effective pay 12, 2018, not retroactive, but still a pay increase. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that bylaw 18-8674, being a bylaw for the indemnity payment for the council for 2018 through to 2020, be now read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that bylaw 18-8674 be read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And finally, the last item is an item that we did discuss in committee, and we did have a discussion over this, and this was basically to approve a process for the retail sale of cannabis in our community. And so there's a couple different options as I went through in committee of our last meeting, and one of the options was a social responsibility location review process whereby provincial officials working alongside City of Portage la Prairie officials would validate potential retail locations similar to the process used for a new liquor mart location. So it is a pretty exhaustive location or selection process, and working alongside our folks, the province makes recommendations on where best to situate these locations. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie adopt the Province of Manitoba's Social Responsibility Location Review Process to approve cannabis retail locations in the City of Portage la Prairie through a review of proposed store locations by designated provincial staff based on predetermined criteria such as proximities to schools, recreation centers, and places of worship, among other specific items.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Fraze. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. And Community Services, City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Buds. That's your game.
Yeah, and we have a second reading for 18-8670. And just wait for my computer to come up here. So, rezoning the property from R1-60 residential family to R2 residential 2 family. And as per the Planning Act, and after considering the results of the public meeting, Council must, within 90 days, choose one of the three actions, and we know what those are. So the background, the property in question, Lot 7, Block 6, Plan 1657, Parish of Portage la Prairie, is presently zoned R160 residential single family, and the applicant CHB Developments wish to rezone this property to R2 residential 2 family. And we know when reading the Portage la Prairie Development Plan states the following under 4.2.11 and 4.2.12. And so, again, as per usual, the application has been circulated with no concerns being expressed. The application has been advertised in a daily graphic for 2 consecutive weeks, circulated to the province, and public notices have been sent to all owners within a 100-meter radius of the proposed development as per Section 168. It should be noted that the first reading of this bylaw was given back on April 23rd to commence the process as defined in the planning application, and as of the writing of this report, there was no received written objections to the proposed rezoning scheme. So it is a recommendation, and I so move that the Council of Portage la Prairie approve the application to rezone the land known as corner of Bridge Road and Henderson Drive, and legally described as Lot 7, Block 6, Plan 1657, Parish of Portage la Prairie, from R1-60 residential single family to R2 residential 2 family, and that bylaw number 18-8670 be read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Fraze. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And finally, that bylaw 18-8670 be read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Fraze. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that concludes the City Planning and Economic Development Committee report.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. Community Services Committee, Councillor Fraze, please.
Thank you, Worship. Community Service Committee has nothing on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Waterworks Committee has nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Draycott, Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Transportation Committee has nothing at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Espy, Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Public Safety Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. We have no deferred business. However, we do have some new business. Councillor Wall, this item is yours.
Yes, Your Worship. This has to do with an increase in water rates for 2019. The Public Utilities Board has rate and other regulatory responsibility for all of Manitoba's water and or wastewater utilities, with the exception of the City of Winnipeg. Their caseload includes 200 municipal utilities and 40 cooperative privately owned utilities. On August 3rd, 2017, the PUB issued Order 86/17 to add efficiency and expedite the time taken to approve new municipal for utility rate increases. In addition of a more defined full study and application process, a simplified process was introduced. To qualify to use the simplified process, the following conditions must be met by the municipality. Completion and filing of audited financial statements must be current and prepared in compliance with the Municipal Act, Section 190. The utility division of the municipality must not be experiencing an operating deficit, which is the lower of $10,000 or 5% of operating expenses. And the utility division must not be experiencing an unexplained annual operating surplus more than 20% of operating expenses. The municipality must accept the following in using the new simplified process. A review of its utility operations is completed, and the requested changes to water and sewer rates, as well as associated fees, must be adequate to meet operating costs of the year changes are requested for. The maximum overall rate and fee increase allowed is 3%. Rate and fee changes can be requested for 1 year only. The city does meet all qualifications, and for our current 2019 purposes has deemed the maximum rate and fee increase is acceptable. Further, administration has begun a process to amend industrial water and sewer agreements to recognize the implementation of Phase 1 of the wastewater plant sewage pretreatment changes for the expansion of Simplot and the addition of Roquette. We will need to submit further applications to the PUB as date appropriate in the coming years. Using the simplified application process for 2019 is a good fit for this evolving area. The simplified PUB application process has several filing requirements. A copy of a new utility rates bylaw, after first reading only, detailing rates, billing information, penalties, fees, etc., and rescinding the past bylaws is required. To summarize changes to water and sewer rates and fees requested for PUB approval and detailed in bylaw 18-8675, 2% increase in Level 1 rates. Level 1 rates include quarterly water and sewer usage up to 50,000 gallons, who are primarily residential and low-volume commercial customers. A 2% increase was considered appropriate in reviewing anticipated cost increases in this area of the utility. 3% increase in Level 2, 3, and 4 rates due to upgrades being made in the water treatment and wastewater plants for larger volume users who are mainly commercial and industrial customers, and needing to meet more restrictive provincial discharge standards in the next few years. The maximum increase in this area was considered appropriate. Range of minimum charge increases varies from 2% to 2.89% for same reasoning as water and sewer usage increases. 3% increase in water and sewer related fees. The increase is reflective of the resource cost expended to deliver these services. Some fees have been unchanged since 2009. Upon submission of the simplified utility rate application to the PUB, a notice of application is drafted by the board as approved by city administration and published in conjunction with the board's rules of practice and procedure. Once the notice period is closed, the board will review the evidence and determine if the information is sufficient to make a decision and whether to proceed by way of paper-based review or calling a public hearing. The recommendation is, and I so move, that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie approve the city's application to the Public Utilities Board for 2019 water and sewer rates by giving bylaw 188675 first reading.
Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
That's all I have at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Councillor Draycott, we have the Municipal Road and Bridge Program grant request for us.
We do. So just a little bit of background. 2018 is the final year for the Municipal Road and Bridge Program. A total of $2.25 million is available to municipalities in 2018, which is substantially lower than the $12 million in 2017. Upon speaking with Municipal Relations Administration staff, they indicated most municipalities may not receive any funding for 2018. Our paving program was tendered and a contract was awarded with the assumption that the city would receive $400,000 from the province this year, but it appears that this is unlikely. However, the Municipal Road Improvement Program eligible projects include all road renewals, road rehabilitation, and new road construction projects. The maximum amount of funding available to road projects in 2018 for a community with a population of 10,000 or more is $400,000. The program funds up to 50% of the total engineering construction cost. Application for deadline is July 6, 2018, and the deadline for completing and submitting all claims for MRBP projects approved in 2018 will be March 1, 2019. So the funding request is as follows. The municipal road pavement milling and asphalt overlays, a total estimated cost of $800,000, with an MRIP request of $400,000 and the city share of $400,000. If the paving program is completed with the assumption that there would be $400,000 in provincial funding and the city does not receive provincial funding this year, $400,000 will have to be drawn from the reserve. Recently, the province signed a new 10-year funding agreement with the federal government, the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Phase 2. Municipalities will benefit from federal and provincial funding for priority projects such as roads and bridges, green, community, cultural, and recreational infrastructure. This agreement is anticipated to be in place for 2019. The city must submit an expression of interest by August 10th of 2018. It is the administrative recommendation that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie authorize administration to apply to the Province of Manitoba Municipal Road and Bridge Program for the funding amount of $400,000.
Okay, moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Espy. Questions or comments on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And the next item is also transportation. Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we do have an award of tender for a supply of a loader. We do have a chart there with the companies and the pricing that we were given for them. This tender was advertised on Merrick's and the city's webpage. All major companies were called and informed of the tender. 14 tender packages were either picked up at the operations department or emailed out upon request. 7 companies submitted packages on or before the closing date and time of Tuesday, June 12th at 2 p.m. Some tenders had multiple options of equipment, and all above pricing includes both taxes and our FOB portage. 5 of the received bills were disqualified because they did not meet the required specifications and therefore did not make it through to the pricing stage. The low bid that meets with all specifications is from Mazer Group and is for the supply of a 2018 Hyundai HL 940 loader. They have a 3-year, 3,000-hour warranty, which is of great benefit as the city has had failure issues with some recent equipment purchases that have luckily been covered under a warranty. Their net bid is less GST, totals $199,260. Their trade-in price offer of $45,000 leaves their price $4,260 over the budget allotment of $150,000. The city has purchased equipment from Mazer Group in the past and has received good service. For information only, the city purchased a new loader in 2013 from High-Track and accepted a trade-in offer as well. The purchase was new and the trade-in was 10 years old. The situation this year is the same. Purchase is new and the trade-in is also 10 years old. The total cost to the city in 2013 was $111,776 net of GST and included the trade. High-Track's offer this year would be $178,167.68 net of GST and including the trade-in. Most of the main players are priced approximately the same. This is approximately a 59% increase in 5 years, so something to consider going forward for budgets. It is the administrative recommendation that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie award the tender of the supply of a loader as specified in Tender 18 OPS 020 to Mazer Group for the tendered price of $208,485, including taxes, and furthermore that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie accept the trade-in offer of $45,000 for the city's 2008 New Holland W130 loader from Mazer Group, leaving a final purchase price of $154,260 net of GST rebate. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next, new business, the Janitorial Services Award for the RCMP. This is the Finance Chair, Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, we are here to discuss the award of tender for the janitorial services for our RCMP Public Safety Building, which was issued under Tender 18 Ops 023. The tender was advertised on the city's web page, and all major known contractors were called and informed of the tender. 8 tender packages were either picked up or emailed out upon request, and only 5 submitted packages on or before June 19th. Of the 5, 3 proponents did not meet the technical rated criteria of 45 to 60 points and therefore did not make it through to the pricing stage. The proponent with the highest rated average combined score pricing and the other factors was Taylor Janitorial with 99 points. And so references were contacted and there was no issues reported with the proposed service provider. And it should be noted also that Taylor Janitorial is a local company comprised of approximately 30 full and part-time employees. The budget for this cleaning in 2018 was $24,507, and the contracted price of $25,776 is just slightly over budget. However, though, it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie award the tender for janitorial services for the Public Safety Building 18 OPS 023 to Taylor Janitorial for the tender price of $81,194.40, including GST, for 3 years.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Fraze. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And the next new piece of business is also finance. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, and this is just to do with the receipt and approval of our 2017 audited financial statements. So we are here to review and approve the audited consolidated financial statements for the 12-month period of ending, December 31st, 2017. And the Municipal Act requires that that audited financial statement be reviewed at the first regular meeting of Council after we receive those statements, and we did receive them on June 22nd. And so they are marked draft until they're approved, and once these draft audited statements are adopted and signed by the Mayor and myself, our auditors will file them with the Province of Manitoba, the Department of Municipal Affairs, which is by a June 30th deadline, which we are going to meet. However, we are right at the line here, and so I know Ms. McFarland is looking to work with Myers Norris Penny for a more expedited process for 2019. Just a small thing, PSAB, or Public Sector Accounting Board, is the way that municipalities are required to prepare their financial statements, which is different than other organizations, and that primarily deals with how amortization is dealt with, and you can see that. In fact, there's a schedule on page 10, or sorry, Schedule 10, page 38, that illustrates some of those changes. It is also important to note that a financial plan must be used in order to calculate property tax rates, which we know of, and details of the calculation of the 2017 mill rate, including education taxes collected on behalf of the Portage la Prairie School Division, are detailed in Schedule 12. It is also, sometimes we get asked on, the city's financial statements, what does all that include? And it does include a consolidated statement, which includes those entities for which the city is deemed to have control over. That's the Portage Handyvan Incorporated, Portage la Prairie Planning District, the Regional Landfill Authority, the Regional Library, Regional Recreation Authority, and Central Plains Incorporated, which is commonly known as PRED. That is also in a schedule. Public disclosure is always very important, as transparency and standard accounting principles for Manitoba municipalities. There is extensive financial information available in the 2017 audited financial statements beyond the standard consolidated statements of financial position, operations, and cash flow through 14 individual schedules and 20 disclosure notes to the financial statements. So it is a comprehensive document, and one that's just not best read just on the first couple of pages, obviously. If so, the city will or could ask Myers Norris Penny to come and explain the financial statement if further detail is requested from council. Again, as I mentioned, these statements are in draft format, and until we have approval, we're not going to release those necessarily to the public, but when we do so, when they are finally approved and signed, we will obviously put them on our website. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the audited consolidated financial statements for the 12 months ended December 31st, 2017, as presented.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We have no old business, so council is adjourned at 6:57 p.m. and we're going to move right into committee. We'll call committee to order at 6:57 p.m. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. Just one small item on committee report, and that's for council to consider the sale of a small strip of city-owned property to a resident. Rachel Saltise is lives at 421 2nd Street Northwest, and she's looking to purchase this small strip. And you can see that it is approximately 10 feet of grass between her garage and the city's chain link fence. And as you scroll down through the report, you can actually see a sketch of the location as well as a Google map. These measurements are based on information provided by Mrs. Saltise, and a survey would be required to get the exact measurements. But it's approximately 6 3/4 feet of that, there's approximately 10 feet of grass between her garage and the city's chain link fence, but only approximately 6 3/4 feet of that 10 feet belong to Mrs. Saltise. The remaining 3.25 belong to the city. And so when we go through our typical method of calculating exactly how much this sale would go for, you can see it would be approximately just over $1,000. So it will be the recommendation that we move forward with this, and I am open to any questions that council might have before this is brought before a regular council meeting the next time we meet.
So just to make it very, very clear, Ms. Saltise is looking to purchase just up to the chain link fence so she can put up a new fence?
The purpose of the purchase to put up a new fence, I'm unclear if that's her reasoning. I think it is just to expand that up to the fence. Whether she's putting another fence down,
just up to the fence.
I have that I'm not privy to unless there's management's information, additional information.
Perhaps we'll refer it to the Director of Operations. Kelly, do you have information on that?
No.
Where the fence was to be built?
right up to the fence.
Was the question so that we,
Just to verify how far over the city property, whether it was right up to the fence.
yeah, and I think it would be, yeah. Any questions?
It says here that you would build a new
Yeah,
fence.
I didn't care too much about it.
There's nothing else. That concludes my committee report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Buds. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Buds again.
And we have the building reports for May of 2018, and council is welcome to peruse those reports, and we actually have Mr. Brooks here to answer any questions that might come up from those reports.
Significant increase in value. What do you attribute that to, Mr. Brooks?
All the work that's going on?
Okay, that's nothing more specific than that, eh?
You know, when you actually look at the permits, for a combined total, 2017 actually saw the number of permits actually more. There's more permits issued in 2017 versus 18, but it's the value. And so one would say that the property or the construction that's going on in our community, each individual project is more substantial, and we know that's going on in our community. So very busy over there at the planning district.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes my City and Planning and Economic Development Committee report.
Councillor Buds. Community Service Committee, Councillor Fraze, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from the Community Service Committee.
Thank you. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing to report.
Transportation Committee, Councillor Dracod.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Transportation and Committee this evening.
And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Public Safety Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. I kind of missed our youth member of council. Councillor Appa, do you have anything for council this evening?
Thank you, Your Worship, but we have nothing to report.
Okay. I understand you've been working on that graduation?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, before we adjourn, we'll have question period. So anybody from the public that has a question for council is welcome to come up to the podium and pose a question for us. Evening, Mr. Knott.
Evening, Mayor Ferris, councillors. July 1, will council keep the bridge open for people to sit on and watch fireworks?
Does the Deputy Chief want to make a comment around that?
I'll speak to that. I believe the bridge will be open as it was last year.
Thank you. There's a good precedent set up a week or so ago with the 600 people having dinner and enjoying things and alcohol and so on. Could council point me to where the record is for when the organizers of this approached council for permission?
The organizer did not approach council. I believe the organizers approached administration. No?
It was before my time.
For your time? How long ago would that have been? Late in the fall of 2017.
Could you point me to where the record is for this? As we spoke about before, if something is planned for the use of alcohol, it is normal to approach council and council discusses it and approves it. Was this done?
Yeah, council doesn't typically approve liquor license. That would be Manitoba Liquors and Lotteries.
You and I have had a discussion, Mayor Ferris, and you told me that it is normal to approach council and discuss these things in council and approve by council. Council has a policy and a bylaw for responding to liquor license applications, and it's a general one which applies to commercial liquor and beer and that kind of thing, beer gardens. council does not have a process or a policy for individuals, but because of the vague but definite council procedures for commercial and large-scale operations, an individual liquor license application was also refused. Is there any comment on that?
Clarify the question.
Sure. Can you clarify, was that your request, Mr. Knott, that you're referring to?
That's my request. You applied the general process to turn down my request for a liquor license because it was across the road from my place, and you said, I can't.
Through your worship to the presenter, Mr. Knott, when we were corresponding regarding your event, we talked about community events and the process for liquor license, and we talked about community events being open to the general public and being a large scale, often through a nonprofit, and that's why in our discussions we went through and discussed why that event wouldn't be allowed.
Yes, and you applied that procedure to individuals.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear on your question.
You used that process as a reason to turn down my application as an individual.
That's correct. Administration did deny that application. There was concerns regarding liability, and there was concerns that we did not have a process to approve individuals to have private functions on city property.
Okay. But you will recall, Mr. Mayor, that we did discuss that, and you said it was normal for organizations to approach council before events. Could you point me to where there's a record of this event approaching council?
No, I don't think there was. As far as I know, there wasn't a formal meeting. I'm missing something here, Mr. Knott. Can you?
Was there any approach in a formal sense by the group who organized the dinner for permission from council to hold an event which had liquor involved?
No, there was not.
Who then approved the use of that on city property?
Administration did. Are there other questions from the gallery? Final call for questions. And committee is adjourned at 7:07 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.